Hi, my name's Kevin Hicks. Welcome to my YouTube channel, The History Squad. In today's video, we explore how Adolf Hitler wrote his book, Mein Kampf, and how it made him into a millionaire. So I have a copy here of Adolf Hitler's book in English, Mein Kampf, which means My Struggle. Originally, it was intended to have a much longer title, but they reduced it to Mein Kampf, My Struggle. I was amazed at how easy it was for me to obtain a copy of this. It's in English, and I simply got it online. It didn't cost very much money at all. And it's a frightening book, but it was how it was written. You know, if you look up who wrote Mein Kampf, it'll come up Adolf Hitler. But it was written when he was doing his 9 months servitude in Landsberg Prison in his luxurious cell, shall we say. And his acolyte, his supporter, worshipper, Rudolf Hess, wrote a lot of it down. You imagine Hitler walking up and down, pontificating, you know, gesticulating and shouting his thoughts. That's the scene I've got in my mind of how this book was written. Apparently, there's a lot of grammatical errors and it's quite repetitive, rambling in some respects. It's also kind of Hitler's view, if you like, of the Third Reich, what's going to happen in the future if he gets into power. I believe this is truly a dangerous book, and I can understand why the German government years ago was reluctant to have this released. I'm just going to read you one paragraph and explain about it to show you how dangerous it is. I used this paragraph for a film script that I was doing, which was one of the reasons I had the book. So here's the paragraph I'm going to read to you, and it is really quite frightening. So you imagine Hitler, he's pontificating, waving his arms, shouting and all that kind of stuff, and this is what's been recorded from his ramblings. He who is bodily and mentally not sound and deserving may not perpetuate his misfortune in the bodies of his children. The Volkisch state, that means the racial state, has to perform the most gigantic rearing task. One day, however, it will appear as a deed greater than the most victorious wars of our present bourgeois era. What he's talking about there is they've got to replace the dead from the First World War. Yeah, but then it goes on. In other words, if you have someone who is mentally ill, handicapped, has a physical deformity or an incurable disease, they must be removed. For although they have a life, it is a life unfit for life. They actually use that in a poster later on. Yeah, they are a burden on society, and therefore, personally, I think it's a very good thing. It takes a lot of pressure off the hospitals, and the amount of money saved is substantial and can be used for more deserving cases. That was read by an individual who had a son who was in a coma and had been most of his life. And he wrote to the Führer, asked if he could, do something about his son. Hitler handed the job to somebody else. This led to the forming of an organization called Tiergarten 4 and the euthanasia program. It's estimated around 5,000 children, disabled one way or another, were put to death by the Nazis. But the program grew to around 250,000 disabled individuals being put to death in Germany, all on the strength of a paragraph from this book. So I've got another quote here. He who would live must fight. He who doesn't wish to fight in this world where the permanent struggle is the law of life has not the right to exist. Good Lord, that's frightening, isn't it? But how did this book make him a millionaire? You see, when it first was published, it wasn't an overnight success. But the more popular he became, the more popular the book, until eventually when he got into power, every household was expected to have one. The government itself bought up thousands and thousands of copies, which were then given as a gift to every couple that were married. But there's another thing to this. It made Adolf Hitler a wealthy man, a millionaire. Well, in 1927, he chartered an aircraft to take him around 27 German cities where he appeared in person to make speeches. This is a politician's way today, isn't it? Not back then. His popularity would soar because of the way he was doing this. And I ask, where did the money come from? Well, I am sure some of it at least would have come from the sales of his book, Mein Kampf. So by 1939, 5 million copies of the book had been sold, and it had been translated into 11 different languages. But the book isn't that good. It's repetitious. I've got some of the notes written down here of what it's called. It's illogical, self-indulgent, and Hitler basically rambles on. And it's full of grammatical errors which reflect that Hitler himself was only a half-educated man. And yet it's one of the most dangerous books, I believe, ever written. So, I hope you've enjoyed our little film. If you did, thumbs up. If you're a subscriber, hey, thanks a million. If you're not a subscriber, then subscribe. Join in, ding that bell, have some fun with history, and join in the great comments that we're having. We've got some fantastic history forums going here. So for now, thanks a bunch.